If you're using WordPress for your corporate SSO, you need to check your plugins right now. An authentication bypass is letting attackers walk right in as administrators.
I'm Morgan, that's Alex. Let's break it down.
We're starting today with a critical vulnerability in a very popular bridge between the WordPress world and the enterprise world. It's CVE 2026-2628, and it affects the all-in-one Microsoft 365 and Entra ID SSO login plugin.
Wait, Entra ID. That's the old Azure AD, right? So we're talking about companies that use their Microsoft credentials to log into their WordPress sites. That's a huge footprint.
Exactly. And the flaw is about as bad as it gets, a 9.8 out of 10 on the severity scale. It's an authentication bypass that works on all versions up to and including 2.2.5. Essentially, an unauthenticated attacker can just log in as any user they want, including the site administrator.
Admin access without a password? This reminds me of those old Go Anywhere or Move It flaws, where the front door was basically left unlocked. If you're an attacker, this is the ultimate prize. You get the keys to the website and potentially a foothold into the broader corporate identity structure if things aren't partitioned correctly.
Right, and because it's an SSO plugin, people trust it to be the gatekeeper. If the gatekeeper doesn't check IDs, the whole system collapses. If you're running this, you need to update past version 2.2.5 immediately. Don't wait for the weekend.
Speaking of things that should have been fixed years ago, we've got another 9.8 to talk about. But this one is almost embarrassing for the vendor. It's OpenMQ.
Yeah, this is CVE 2026-22886. OpenMQ has a management service called IMQ Brokerd. It's TCP-based, and while it technically requires authentication, it ships with a default administrative account. The username is admin, and the password is admin.
Admin in 2026? Alex, I feel like we've been preaching about default credentials since the early 2000s. Didn't we see this exact same issue with those Mirai botnets years ago? Just scanning for defaults and taking over the world?
It's the same playbook. The real kicker here is that the product doesn't even force a password change on the first login. It'll just let you keep admin forever. In real-world deployments, people just stand these services up and forget about them, leaving that management port exposed to the internet.
And once an attacker is in that management service, they basically own the message queue. They can intercept data, disrupt operations. It's a total compromise. It's a reminder that it works out of the box is often synonymous with it's insecure out of the box.
One more for the patch list today. Apache Ranger. This is CVE 2025-59059. And yeah, that's a 2025 ID, but the details in the push for version 2.8.0 just hit the radar. It's a remote code execution vulnerability involving something called the Nashorn script engine creator.
Nashorn. That's the JavaScript engine for the JVM. We've seen issues with script engines being abused for RCE before. It's usually a case of the application being a little too helpful by letting users, or attackers, execute code they shouldn't be able to touch.
Exactly. If you're on Apache Ranger version 2.7.0 or older, you're vulnerable. The fix is in version 2.8.0. Given that Ranger is used for data security and governance, having an RCE flaw in it is, well, it's ironic, but also incredibly dangerous.
It's like the security guard having a back door that anyone can crawl through. Okay, so we've got WordPress SSO, OpenMQ defaults, and Apache Ranger RCE. That's a heavy morning. But shifting gears to the threat landscape, Microsoft just put out a warning about OAuth that feels like an evolution of the phishing we've been seeing.
This is interesting because it's not the usual token theft. Microsoft is seeing campaigns targeting government and public sector groups where the attackers use OAuth URL redirection to bypass defenses. They aren't trying to steal your session token right away. They're using the trust of the OAuth flow to bounce you to attacker-controlled infrastructure.
So, because the URL looks like a legitimate Microsoft or corporate login redirect, the email filters and the browser's built-in protections just wave it through? That's clever. It's using the plumbing of the internet against us.
Right, it's a redirect abuse. It makes the phishing link look much more legitimate because it is technically starting at a legitimate domain. It's a reminder that we can't just look at the domain name anymore to decide if a link is safe.
And while we're on the subject of sophisticated attacks, Team Cymru just released some wild data on a campaign targeting Fortinet FortiGate appliances. They're calling out an open-source tool called CyberStrike AI.
Yeah, this is the AI-driven threat we've been waiting for. This CyberStrike AI platform was used to execute attacks across 55 different countries. Team Cymru traced it back to a specific IP address, 212.11.64.250. And it looks like the attackers are using AI to automate the testing and exploitation of these FortiGate devices.
This is exactly what people were worried about when ChatGPT launched. Not just writing better phishing emails, but using AI-native security testing platforms to find and hit vulnerabilities at a scale humans can't match. 55 countries. That's a massive dragnet.
It really changes the math for defenders. If the attackers are using AI to find the holes, we have to be even faster with the patches. Speaking of speed, Google Chrome is actually changing their whole release philosophy to try and keep up.
Right, they're moving from a 4-week cycle to a 2-week cycle for releases. On one hand, I love getting security fixes faster. On the other hand, for IT admins, this sounds like a never-ending cycle of testing and deployment. Every 2 weeks? That's aggressive.
It is, but Google's argument is that smaller, more frequent updates are actually more stable than big, everything including the kitchen sink updates every month. It's the DevOps mentality applied to the browser. If you're managing a fleet, you're going to need to automate your Chrome updates if you haven't already.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on a few legal and privacy stories that caught my eye. First, Google is actually heading to the Supreme Court over geofence warrants. They've filed an amicus brief saying these warrants are unconstitutional.
For those who don't know, a geofence warrant is when law enforcement asks Google for data on every device that was in a certain area at a certain time. It's a reverse search. Instead of starting with a suspect, you start with a location and find everyone who was there.
Google says they've objected to over 3,000 of these in just the last few months. It's a massive privacy debate. And speaking of privacy, California just handed down a $1.1 million fine to Play On Sports. They're a high school ticketing platform.
The CPPA, the California Privacy Protection Agency, alleges they were collecting students' personal data and using it for targeted ads without a clear way for people to opt out. It's a big signal that the California regulators are looking closely at how EdTech and school-adjacent platforms handle minor data.
And finally, a bit of a don't do this at home story. A woman in Florida was just sentenced to 2 years for trafficking Microsoft software labels. She bought millions of dollars worth of labels, but sold them without the actual software.
It's a classic gray market scheme, but the scale of it, millions of dollars, is what got the feds involved. It's a reminder that software licensing isn't just a headache for IT. It's a major vector for fraud.
All right, Alex, what's the one thing people should do before they finish their coffee?
Check your WordPress plugins. If you're using that Microsoft 365 SSO plugin, get it to version 2.2.6 or higher. CVE 2026-2628 is a wide open door for attackers, and you don't want to be the one who left it unlocked.
Your daily AI-powered security briefing. If this saved you time, subscribe. We're here every morning.
Stay patched, stay paranoid.